Well, it's story time again. We're sitting right out of front of the shop. The front door is right here under my cherry tree, and there's still some cherries left, although the birds have pretty much devastated the tree. We did get a couple of big bowls full of cherries. It's, what is it, the end of June, and hey, the next story. All right. This one happened in about 1966, I would say. My buddy called me one night. I'm wild and I'm crazy. I'm probably 18, maybe 19 years old at the time. I just bought my first Harley, and it had high handlebars. It had an extended front end. It had a small Bates tank on it. Oh man, it was the coolest bike. It was yellow with red flames. Oh, I'm telling you, it was the best thing a young man could ever had. Well, could ever have. But, and I took it out as much as I could. My buddy calls me one day. He says, "Hey, Nick, let's take a ride to San Francisco. I got someplace I'm going to show you." So hey, yeah, sure, I'm up for anything. So, and in those days, gas was 20 cents a gallon. So, it took about a gallon and a half to get there and back. So it was no problem. And so we jump on our bikes. We roll down the freeway. In those days, there was no traffic, or not as much traffic. So, 100 miles an hour, pew, straight down the freeway, going north, get onto the Bay Bridge, going to San Francisco, roll across that bridge, just going as fast as we could go. It was a hot summer night. We were, a couple of young guys, just crazy and wild. So we roll into San Francisco, making all kinds of racket, no mufflers. Hey, who needs mufflers, right? Oh man, come on. So roll into San Francisco, loud as hell, pull in to Fillmore, to the Avalon Ballroom. And as we pull up the street to the Avalon, we see that there's motorcycles parked perpendicular to the sidewalk, one after another, after another, after another, after another, parked nice and tight, probably for 4 blocks. There might have been 2,000 Harleys. There was guards standing over them. I mean, not guards with guns and a badge, but old crusty bikers with long beards and long hair and just kind of hanging out and just daring anybody to even touch one of those bikes. I would like to have gone and just pushed one over and just had him go domino all the way. But, I had too much respect for Harleys at that point in my life. I still do. So we drive past the Avalon Ballroom, and we go up the hill, 4 or 5 blocks before there's an opening to park our bikes. We pull our bikes in, lots of gas, and oh man, it's just, loud, and pull them in and kick the kickstands out and lean the bikes down on the kickstands and rev them a couple of extra times and then turn off the ignition. So the bikes are quiet. We look down the street and it's just like biker heaven. There's bikes, and every one of them are choppers. I didn't see one full-dressed Harley. Now, that's not the case these days. There are a lot of full-dress Harleys, probably because we're all old guys now, and, a bare-bones chopper is not for an old guy. So we start walking toward the Avalon Ballroom. And we walk down the street and we're just checking out the bikes, all different types and styles, 3-wheelers, 2-wheelers, extended front ends, short front ends, Oh man, and they were all, unlike bikes now, where Harley Davidson makes so many varieties. These were all reconditioned bikes. They bought old cop bikes or bikes that were in old barns and stuff, and stripped them down and put them back together and put chrome on them and had them painted. And man, they're just like beautiful works of art, one after another after another. And we're just kind of wandering down slowly, just like ogling the bikes. I'm thinking back there, somebody's going to steal my bike. But the reality of it was there were so many bikes that, it was like a school of fish or a flock of birds. The odds are that if a bike does get stolen, it's not going to be yours. So anyhow, we're walking towards the Avalon Ballroom, and we get within about a half a block of the Avalon, and I happen to notice on the sidewalk a bunch of guys sitting down on the pavement, leaning against the it was kind of a little pony wall, concrete pony wall, leaning against it. And there must have been 40 of them. And I thought, wow, what are they doing there? So as we kind of walk slowly, we're still looking at bikes, and I keep eyeing these 40 or so guys. They're looking at bikes and looking at bikes. And as we get close enough to actually see the details of what was going on there, these guys were beat to shit. Bloody, knocked up against the wall, just, broken individuals. And all of them were passed out. Now, passed out from what is the question? Were they beat so badly that they were knocked out, or had they drank too much and whatever happened? So as we got close, as we got to the line of 40 or so guys pushed up against this little pony wall, I noticed coming out of the front door two big honking linebacker bikers, actually Hells Angels, that had a Hells Angel patch on their back, and like a little with a do-rag, and oh man, they were like tough as nails. They come rolling out of that thing, just laughing and having a good time, dragging for a guy who was just beat to a pulp, dragged him up the street to the end of the line and threw him against the wall, and then walked back down. As we walked past those 40 guys, these two linebackers brought out two more guys, drug them past us, each one, broken arms and whatever was going on, lined them up against the wall and dumped them, and then walked back in, laughing and having a great time. So I look at my buddy Ben. I said, what's going on? He says, this is the Hells Angels dance. They have it once a year. And I'm like, really? Just Hells Angels dance? Oh man, at the Avalon Ballroom? This is like, the ultimate. So we get to the front door, and we turn and walk in the front door, and it's, if I remember correctly, it's a couple of glass doors, and you walk into the Avalon Ballroom, and it was never a real high-end, swanky place. It was just kind of basically a big dance hall. So you walked into the Avalon, and here's like 6 or 8 Hells Angels standing around. Each one of them do like big honking linebacker guys, and they're standing around, and so we pay our fee, and it couldn't have been $5, maybe 10 tops, and pay our fee, and the guy says, up the stairs. So we start up the stairs, and there's literally this half landing, half a flight of stairs to a big landing. And probably the landing was 20 by 20. The carpets were all stained and screwed up, and so we start up the stairs, and all of a sudden, coming from the balcony, which is the landing was here, and then there was another flight of stairs, or half a flight of stairs, that went up to the next level. Over the balcony comes a body, and it's some kind of biker guy, and he falls onto the landing, and he just flops right onto the landing. We both look at each other and we go, holy shit, what have we gotten ourselves into? The two big linebackers run upstairs, laughing and having a good time. They're, obviously drunk. They grab this guy, they drag him down the steps, and one of them pounds him in the face, and drag him out the front door. And of course, we don't see at that point, but I'm assuming took him up to the end of the line and dumped him against that wall. We're pretty freaked out at that moment. So anyhow, all right, we're here. Why not? We walk up the stairs and open into the Avalon Ballroom. Not the ballroom in itself, but it looked like more like a place where they had a bar and a place for people just to hang out, some tables and chairs and shit like that. And there were maybe 300 bikers. Hell's Angels in one corner, Gypsy Jokers in another corner. And there was another motorcycle group, and I can't think of the name of them at the time, but they were a big group, and they were all in conflict with one another out in the world. And in this place, they were putting up with each other, but they were all separate. Three ends of the hall, and we walk right into the middle of them, and it's like, holy shit, what are we doing? So we just literally found ourselves a wall and backed up to it and just stood there smiling, because we didn't want to rile anybody up. And these guys literally, it was just amazing. They're all drinking and throwing beer bottles and having a great time, and finally, and we stood there for probably 20 minutes, half hour, because it was so interesting. So we're standing there, and inevitably one of the guys from another biker group would saunter on over to the Hells Angels, or a Hells Angel, actually would be always the other group sauntering over to the Hells Angels, pick a fight with a Hells Angel, and the Angels would just jump on him. Like 6 of them, and just beat the fuck out of him. And then they'd take him and throw him over the rail. I mean, literally, the guy falls 15 feet onto this thin piece of worn out carpet. And I was like, this must have happened, I don't know, 10 times during the time that we were standing there. It's like every couple of minutes, somebody would pick a fight with somebody else. It was like this whole macho thing. It's like, oh man, I'm going to pick a fight because I'm tough. I'm tougher than any one of you guys. It was almost comedic. So we're standing against the wall, and there's like, the whole wall has people standing against it, just like smiling, not causing any trouble. And so as we're standing against the wall, this is all going on in front of us. There's bikers yelling back and forth at each other, and then inevitably those two bikers would come together and crash, and start fists would start flying and boots would start kicking. And then if there was a Harley guy involved, 4 or 5 Harley guys, Hells Angels, 4 or 5 Hells Angels would come running over and just beat the fuck out of them. He's like, why did you do that? Very, So after a while, we just like, okay, let's get out of here. We kept hearing music coming from the other room. It's like, let's just kind of work our way to the other room. And certainly, we just kind of moved down the wall very slowly, very friendly, very carefully, and we walked into this second room, which was the actual ballroom. and looked up on stage, and Janis Joplin is singing her heart out. I'm like, whoa! It was the first time I had seen Janis Joplin. It was the first time I'd heard of Janis Joplin. But she was going for it, man. She was, all there. And we kind of worked our way along that wall. I mean, the place was packed. And, you were like this. And everybody is jumping up and down to the music and having a great time. And so we just kind of worked our way down the hall. She sings. By the time we get closer to the front so we can actually see who's standing up there, because I'm like, wow, this woman is amazing. By the time we get up to the front, she sang 4 or 5 songs. And I'm like, whoa. I was just blown away. And so she ends her set. And she says, goodbye, everybody, takes a swig of Southern Comfort and walks off stage. And I mean, almost at the same time, the lights move from one stage to the next, and here's Jefferson Airplane. And they start into White Rabbit, and I'm like, holy shit. Now, I'd heard of Jefferson Airplane at that point, and I knew White Rabbit very well. And I just like, wow, man, I broke down in tears. Of course, I'm a badass biker, so all the tears are inside. I'm not showing anything outside. That went on for hours. Janis, and then Jefferson Airplane would come back on, sing 4 or 5 songs. Then Janis would come back on, sing 4 or 5 songs. And they just went all night. So by the time we're kind of ready to leave, not ready to leave, but just, go find a different environment, it was probably 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Things were they weren't even beginning to slow down. So, we leave that hall. You can still hear what's going on anywhere in that building. We leave that hall and we walk across the hall to the next ballroom, because there's 2 or 3 ballrooms in there. And this second ballroom has people who had passed out, who had OD'd, who had, there was drugs everywhere, all kinds of drugs. People who had OD'd on drugs, and they were literally, by about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, they were literally stacked 4 deep in this room. I mean, and they were all out like a light. I can't imagine that there weren't a couple of dead people in that pile, just from the weight of other people laying on them. So, I just looked in that room. There was no reason to go into that room, of course, but just the sight of maybe 150 people on the floor, stacked 3 and 4 deep. Ben and I looked at each other. We said, okay, let's get out of here. So we, jumped on worked our way back out. The bikers are still banging each other. They're still throwing people over the balcony. Although it's beginning to slow down, I think all of the guys and wannabe tough guys kind of worked their way out, and they were out laying against the building. So we go out, we go down the stairs, over the landing, down the other stairs, and out the front door, and walk back to our bikes. And I mean, literally, there was a couple of gaps where bikes had left, but not many. And 4 blocks later, and oh, by the way, the wall, it was 3 times as long. There was maybe 100 guys just laying there. Some of them had woken up and hobbled over to their bikes and drove home. We got on our bikes. It's 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. It was a hot summer night. We got on our bikes. We got back on the freeway. We went back to the bridge, blasted over the top of the bridge, blasted up the Nimitz Freeway, at the time called the Nimitz Freeway, and back to Hayward, where I lived. And that is the end of the story. Okay, not the end of the story. There's a little bit more. 2 weeks later, I'm the bike mechanic, so I'm constantly getting invited to go on bike runs at that point because, guys have their bikes break down, and they go, "Hey Nick, can you?" And so, of course, that was my part of being on a bike run. So I got invited to a lot of bike runs, and this particular run was to San Jose, to the fairgrounds, I believe. So we rolled down this is 2 weeks later. We rolled down the freeway, come into the San Jose fairgrounds, pay our whatever the fee was, and there's probably 10 bikes, maybe 15, and we roll into the fairgrounds themselves to a stage, and sure enough, Janis Joplin is there singing her heart out. I'm like, wow, cool. So we pull our bikes into the side and kind of, lots of revving and engines and stuff, and pull them right up to the side, and we're thinking, okay, we got a reasonable view of Janis. She was probably about that big, 150 yards away. She stops the song. She goes, "Hey, you bikers, pull your bikes on up here." And we were like, really? So she had us drive our bikes right up to the stage. And so here we are sitting at the bottom of the stage, 10, 15 bikes lined up, and we're just sitting on our seats, just watching her on stage. That was like the ultimate moment. And in reality, those were the only two concerts I ever went to. I went to a couple of chicken shit ones, and of course I did craft shows, and part of the craft show was to be at a concert. But to actually go to a concert and listen to the singer, and Janis Joplin, she was at the top of her game at that point. I think it was probably maybe a month, 2 months later when she, died of heroin overdose. So, this little addendum, this is Nick Collier, checking out.